Bringing physical miniatures and touchscreen technology together is one of the most exciting new frontiers of tabletop RPGs. In this video, I'll be showing you how to combine real player miniatures, touchscreen technology, and Foundry VTT using a few key mods and a little creative crafting. This has easily been one of the most requested videos from the community. And honestly, it's been one of the most frustrating to make as well. See, I've lost count on how many different setups I've tested trying to get this to work, but after a lot of trial and error, I'm happy to say I did find a solution. See, touchscreen technology keeps getting better and better, but there's still a few challenges to work around. That being said, the method I'm sharing with you today addresses several of these problems, but just as a heads up, it will require hands-on crafting, not just mods. Now, if you enjoy this content, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Your support means we'll be able to continue making videos like this in the future. Now let's go ahead and get ourselves started. First, let's get our Foundry mods installed and running. You're going to need the following mods installed on your system: Illandrins Turn Maker, Lock View, and Material Plane. If you want an explanation of how Illandrins Turn Maker and Lock View work, or if you want to know how to set up a basic Foundry setup for touchscreen, then watch this video right over here. Today we're going to focus in on the Material Plane mod. Now, the Material Plane mod by Material Foundry is meant to be used alongside hardware designed by Material Plane. This hardware looks really great, however, the price tag that's around it is a bit outside of my budget. Luckily for us and the community, they've decided to make it available for people who have infrared touchscreens as well. Now, Foundry has been recently updated to version 13. Now, there's a lot of really great updates with this new version. However, there are some issues with the effectiveness of this mod for the time being. For this reason, I'm currently using Foundry version 12 for this setup. Let's start by navigating to the mod settings, which are not located in the Settings tab. As you can see, they're attached to the main game settings. Change the active user to the Foundry user profile that's using the touchscreen. As you can see, I've named my user Touchscreen. Change the device to Touchscreen. Movement method, change to Step by Step. For the next settings, select the following. To aid in the functionality of the software, we're going to be using Illandrins Turn Maker mod. The reason is that this mod helps us lock down the other player tokens. That way we don't move another player by accident. If you're using Foundry version 13, some of these features won't work as well, but I believe it's still worth installing for the other features this mod offers. Now that we have all the mods up and running, let's go ahead and talk about some of the bugs you're going to run into using this first mod-only solution. Number 1, miniature height. When miniatures are lowered to the infrared laser, they often miss the base of the miniature and instead hit the legs. This is a major issue because it causes confusion for the lasers. This often looks like your token is being selected over and over and over and over again. To solve for this, I would suggest getting some kind of a stand to raise up your miniature. The stand also registers the base as a single interaction. I found some success using some of these felt pads meant for furniture. Link in the description. For my setup, I found that 2 of them work very well together in making the stand for my miniatures. Number 2, number of miniatures. The more touch points an infrared laser has to read, the more issues you're going to run into. The solution for this is to only have player miniatures on the table instead of a whole miniature army that they're facing. For me, 4 is a good limit. I use digital tokens for enemies and NPCs. Number 3, miniature proximity. The closer the miniatures are to one another, the more that they'll fight over control of the digital token that's underneath them. In addition to this, because of the laser's functionality, if too many miniatures are in one spot, they'll create dead zones for your touchscreen. Unfortunately, there really isn't a solution for this issue. Number 4, touchscreen confusion. The more touch points that you have active on your touchscreen at one time, the more confused your digital tokens will become underneath, like I said before. But this does not mean that I'm moving those tokens. Just their act of being on the table will cause confusion for the touchscreen by activating them and moving them around. This will show up in ways that are general weird movements, and in addition to that, just general oddities on your game table. Now, even with these issues, you can still run a game using this limited setup. Just be prepared for some digital frustrations along the way. But not to worry, Like I said, I found a solution that'll help solve a lot of these issues. But before I show you what I came up with, let me show you a resource that every touchscreen user should be aware of. Beneos Battlemaps, who also happens to be the sponsor of today's video. When my son asked me to run a game for him and his friends, I was a little worried, because I was already overloaded with a lot of different projects and responsibilities. I figured that if I could find a tool that would help me with the bulk of my prep time as a game master, then I might give it a shot. Enter Beneos Battlemaps and their Curse of Strahd campaign pack. As a game master, I was already familiar with Beneos' amazing maps. I especially loved their cinematic videos that made the locations come to life. With my son's campaign, I knew I was going to need to rely heavily on Beneos resources. And when I did, I was blown away. With only a few clicks, I was up and running with my Foundry Curse of Strahd campaign that included landing pages, tokens, stat blocks, battle maps, world maps, music and sound effects, cinematics, all arranged by location in quick downloadable packages. Touchscreen users should be aware of Beneos Battlemaps because their landing pages are touchscreen compatible. This means that the touchscreen is not just used for miniature movement, but can also be used to navigate to campaign-relevant information. Players can independently navigate to and interact with the world map in dynamic ways. NPC information like names, locations, and portraits. Personalized journal information, such as player notes, or for Curse of Strahd, artifacts found. And even a card reading location. For my players, having an environment for themselves that they can navigate to and interact with makes the sessions come to life and even more interactive and fun. Beneos Battlemaps didn't just help me prep for my campaign, they enhanced it for my players and for me as well. Whether you're running Curse of Strahd like I am or building your very own world, everything that they create feels polished, immersive, and feels like it was made for the touchscreen environment right out of the box. Check out Beneos Battlemaps for yourself on Patreon, and trust me, you will not be disappointed. Links to their YouTube and Patreon pages are in my description below. You can thank me later. Now, like I said earlier, I have been trying to find a solution for these specific problems for quite a while now. And where I'm not 100% satisfied with my solution, I am at least happy to say I did find one. This is a piece of clear acrylic. As long as the acrylic is clear and free of scratches and imperfections like bubbles, then the infrared laser will pass right through it without any issue. But how does this help with physical miniature setup? It helps because it removes all the additional touchscreen interactions, leaving only the miniature movement behind. Let's examine the previous issues with an acrylic solution. Number 1, miniature height. Well, these acrylic stands also help to elevate the miniature above the sensor, so you're not going to have any issues there. Number 2, number of miniatures. While you can still add now a few more additional tokens, you're still going to run into this issue. It just won't be as severe. If you keep stacking acrylic piece after acrylic piece after acrylic piece after acrylic piece, the laser is going to eventually having a hard time getting through all those acrylic pieces and making that connection. So you're still going to have an issue with the number of miniatures you're going to be able to provide onto your table. Number 3, miniature proximity. The previous dead zones are now saved. You still may run into a few issues here, but it'll be dramatically reduced. Number 4, touchscreen confusion. This is a big one. With the laser no longer overloaded with information, there are far fewer issues with the touchscreen getting confused. This means less time fighting with the system and more time enjoying your game. With all this information, you're probably wondering to yourself, how can I get my hands on these acrylic dreams? Well, the only way to do that is to create them for yourself. But don't worry, I've got you covered there too. Why don't you go and follow me into my workshop and I'll show you how I did it. When you buy the acrylic bar, you're going to need to cut it down to size. The bar that I suggest is 15 millimeters square or 0.6 inches square. Link in the description. Now this rod is 10 inches long. What we need to do is cut it down to about 3/4 of an inch high. Now 3/4 is what works on my table, but your table may require some different type of height. This will largely depend on the specifics of your table and your laser. What we need to do is build a cross-cut sled to help us cut the bars down to the correct size. Here is a model of what we're going to be building today. What we want to do is build a platform that will hold the acrylic in place and keep the acrylic square with the table saw or the bandsaw that we're using. Once we build the platform, we'll be able to place the acrylic bar inside of our holder and make the same cuts over and over again. Now, cross-cut sleds use grooves found on the table saw called T-tracks. The sled runs up and down these tracks to make repeatable cuts. In most cases, this is done with a thin strip of wood at the bottom of the sled, the same size as the T-track. However, in my case, I ran into some issues that you'll soon see. For this project, I decided to go ahead and try out the Wen 9-inch bandsaw. I needed a bandsaw for my workshop, and so this seemed like a good enough excuse to get one. In the end, it's not a bad bandsaw, but it has one feature that really makes me annoyed, and that's this little groove it has inside the slider track. This groove means I won't be able to create a cross-cut sled, which is what I would normally do in this type of a situation. Instead, I have to create a monstrosity. I start by grabbing a few pieces of leftover plywood and cutting them down to size. My goal here is to create a sled using the sides of the machine as opposed to using that miter slide. Look at this thing. Ugly. Still, I clamp on the other side, making sure that, again, everything is nice and straight. And now I own the ugliest cross-cut sled in existence. With the cross-cut sled in place, go ahead and make a slice through your sled about halfway through. Now with some additional scrap pieces, we're going to be creating a holder for the acrylic bar as it goes through the bandsaw. At this point, we want to make sure that everything we do is square with the blade. When purchasing the acrylic rod, you may be tempted to buy a thicker or thinner rod, or even a circular rod instead. All of these ideas will not work, trust me. I have tried every rod shape and size. When placing this top connection, you want it to be snug but not too tight. Regular glue will work just fine, but as you can see, I got a little impatient and decided to pull out my nail gun. That should help everything move along a lot quicker. Next, we're using an additional scrap piece to create a stop block for our acrylic bar. This makes it so that each one of our cuts to our acrylic bar will be the exact same size. I'm adding an additional scrap piece to the bottom of my sled so that I can use a clamp to hold my stop block in place. I should have just used a longer scrap piece for the bottom section, but each table is going to be unique in the size of acrylic bar that it's going to need, which is why we have the stop block. For me, I'm making all of my slices at 3/4 of an inch. If this is too small, I can easily get the stop block and move it to the size that I need. I'm going to switch my clamp to a clutch-style bar clamp because it'll give me more room, and it won't interfere with the bandsaw. With the cross-cut sled built, it's time to start cutting the acrylic down to size. Be sure to stop your cut right after the acrylic bar has been sliced through. If you keep going, you're going to cut your sled in half, and then it's useless. You'll have to build a whole new one again. The nice thing about having this sled is I can cut as many of these rods as I need for my player characters. If one gets damaged, I just come down and make another cut, and I'm ready to go. Now that you've finished making some acrylic stands, it's time to start assembly. Step 1. Felt bottom to protect the screen. The one I'm using has an adhesive back. Just simply cut down the size that you need and press on. Step 2. Double-sided tape to attach the miniature. This double-sided tape works great because it's about the same size as most of my miniatures. There are links in the description for both of these items. At this point, you're all set. The one thing to keep in mind with this setup is that the square acrylic needs to remain square with the table. If you turn the square so that the edge hits the laser first, it will think this is an interaction and cause problems. This is a simple issue to work around. So there you have it. Some solutions for adding physical miniatures to your touchscreen setup. Let me know in the comments below if you tried the solution or if you find other ways of creating these acrylic stands. Be sure to check out our next video where I go into more detail about how to add additional tools specific for touchscreen users. Until then, I wish you the very best of luck in all of your adventures, and I'll see you next time when we level up our crafting together.